hopefully this will be a nice, kind of exciting panel. We have done this for the past, I think, 6 years together, so we have this kind of shtick routine that we do. And so you'll get the first run through, and then the next group will get the next. But what we're going to do is we'll introduce ourselves. We each typically have kind of a scenario, an analogy to teaching, things that you need to do to be prepared as a lab instructor. And then we're going to leave time open, because we really do want you to, as we're talking, have something out that you can write notes on. And if we bring up something that you would like to ask us about, it's always really good at the end to have questions, because you think of things that we can't cover kind of in 20 or 30 minutes. So we welcome your questions, and we want you to kind of jot those down as we go so that you'll remember them when we open the floor for questions. My name is Dr. Alexa Chilcutt, and I'm the director of the public speaking program here at the University of Alabama. And I manage and train graduate teaching assistants that teach public speaking, a basic course, to a couple of thousand students a year. And I will go ahead and let's just introduce ourselves, and then we'll kind of come back for some of our tips.
I'm Lisa Mckinney. I'm a professor in the accounting department, which is extremely exciting to everyone. But I coordinate the accounting labs, which you can imagine how awesome those are. One of the most dreaded things ever is to go to an accounting lab. You can't fathom what you would be doing in that. And so we have about 13 graduate assistants, and we have a couple thousand students. So I've got some things from my end to give you a perspective on.
I'm Dr. Murray Silverstone in physics and astronomy. I supervise the astronomy lab TAs who actually teach their lab courses entirely. And then I work in the intro physics classes that I teach with some graduate TAs who work with me on the physics labs for my classes. But they it's a little bit of a mix of the two of us working together, and some of them work on their own. So we can hit on some of the important details for all these sorts of labs and experiences.
And in the public speaking program, it's the same. The graduate students are teaching those labs by themselves. I teach lecture, and then they meet with students twice a week, and they're in charge of their own domain. And so I know that this is a transition for all of you. How many of you have taught before? Raise your hands. Okay, how many of you, this is the first time teaching? Raise your hand. Are you excited? A little nervous? Maybe. How many of you graduated from undergrad just last year? Okay, that should add a little more anxiety to it, which is good. So that will roll into my 3 kind of points, and we'll kind of feed off of each other as we go. But mine all have P's in them. So being prepared, professional, and approachable. I know approachable doesn't start with a P, but it has P, right? So prepared, professional, and approachable. And I think that that's really the mix of what you need as far as creating that persona that establishes some credibility with your students and allows you, because this is such a fabulous time for you to grow as a professional, whether you intend on being a faculty member later on or just get your master's or PhD and go out into the corporate world. This is a really great test run for managing conflict, for establishing a sense of credibility and authority. And the first thing is being prepared. So on that first day of class, I know it's just coming up next Wednesday, but having everything together, being ready, being on time, running through the exercises, because nothing will dash your credibility more than being up in front of undergraduates. And if you're just an undergraduate a year ago, you know how scrutinizing you can be toward someone standing up there. And that immediately, if they think that you're unprepared, that will kind of take away from that credibility. So there's my first P.
Great P. I have a P, but I don't have 3 Ps.
Okay.
Because I'm not that organized. But the one I would like to say is just kind of the biggest belief I have about teaching is to have fun with it. Every one of you is going to graduate school in an area that you love and you're a little bit nerdy about. You're an accounting nerd, you're an astronomy nerd, and you just dig it. That's what you chose. And so you need to show that. Because any class where the person is enjoying the topic, it just kind of keeps you awake. You love this stuff. You may have real world stories, something you read in the news. You may have just done something. anytime you bring in your personality and your passion, P. It's all about the P's. Personality and passion, everybody in the room enjoys it. I've heard people taking geology classes, which sounds horrible. But I've heard people tell me it was actually fun because the person was so into it. Anything can kind of be interesting. It's all that delivery mechanism. But it doesn't mean that all of you are going to be extremely outgoing people. I've seen some really good teachers that are more of a quiet, reserved person, but I was still digging the fact that they love that subject. So share you. Don't be scared to share you, and share your passion. And it's gonna be a little bit contagious no matter what. Try to take the dryness out of it and make class something that there is some humor or something in it, to kind of lighten the stress a little bit, and you can actually enjoy your lab. I know it's a strange concept, but try to bring in things that will make the lab somewhat enjoyable.
Definitely. So in physics, we like to use a lot of demos, and I like to use analogies as well. And I guess I'll share a little bit now. My daughter is 16 months old, and she has got a lot of toys. Actually, she inherited some from her brother. And I like to make an analogy in this panel to a layer cake, because I want to talk about the 3 layers of basically what I see your role is and the instructors that I work with. So pretend this toy isn't a stacking toy, but it's actually a 3-layer layer cake. I don't have the right toy here. But anyway, on this layer cake, I want to describe that. I'll talk about the top layer, which I would say is your interaction with your professor you're working with the university itself, with your field even. The middle layer, that is going, well, actually, let me get the bottom layer. The bottom layer are the students, right? They're the ones you're teaching. They're the goal of what your work is in your lab room. And then the middle layer, that's how you get between the top and the bottom. That's the pedagogy. That's how you're going to be teaching, how you're going to be instructing and guiding. So I want to use this analogy to try to talk about those 3 separately. I'll talk about the top right now for not really my 3 things, but just the one thing here, and we'll get into the other 2 later. But in this interaction, there's a lot of, we've already hit on professionalism. That'll come up a few more times, I think, if history teaches me here. Being prepared, being personable, all that stuff is great in your interaction with the university and also with the students. And make sure if there are deadlines, getting grades in on time, working on the next week's assignment or something that has to feed back to the professor you're working with, make sure you don't miss a deadline, because there are people counting on you to get those little pieces together and to get them done. And if there is something that will cause you to miss a deadline, warn the people who have that deadline, who need to meet it, so that they can make preparations for something that's coming late. So that's part of what I would say in that top layer that's really key. Okay? Mm-hmm. We'll get to the other layers.
Murray brings me to a good point. I want to ask you, what are some things, think about some of the worst instructors that you've had. I'm sure somebody's had some bad instructors along the way, right? Or bad TAs. Can you think of any? What were some of the qualities that you did not appreciate in those instructors or TAs? Offer them up. Yes, in the back. Tardiness. Tardiness to the lab or class itself? Wow, okay. Yes. Oh, sorry, okay, go ahead.
Really inconsistent professors.
Inconsistent in what way?
Just in how they, I guess, assign homework, how they teach the class from day to day.
Okay.
Expectations.
So expectations for grade. Okay, what were you gonna say?
They weren't receptive to constructive criticism.
Okay, all right. I've got a good tip for you there. All right, right here.
Making things way more difficult than they needed to be.
Oh, okay.
Giving him, like, you're never going to need to know this, but here's this whole thing. It's really distracting from what we actually do need to know. So we'd be like, the only thing I remember is what we aren't supposed to remember.
Gotcha. Okay, what were you gonna say?
Speaking monotone throughout the entire class.
Bueller. Anybody else? What were you gonna say, Jamon?
Just missing classes completely and not letting their students know.
Never. Okay, I'm gonna take a couple more. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say neurotic, but it's mislabeling, so I'm going to say that that professor was condescending. So if it was
Condescending.
you know, it's like that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. What were you
On the
gonna say?
monotone thing, I don't have a lot of professors in the general business courses that would just
You can tell they taught it 5 times this week and they just hated it themselves.
Fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to fake the enthusiasm. What were you going to say?
I had a Greek teaching fellow, and it's a lot of work learning Greek.
Sure.
And so I'm like, well, I'm having difficulty. She said, well, you need to study more. I said, I've done that. What else do you have for me? You have
Right.
any tips, tricks? What do you have? She didn't have any. Just study more. You'll be
Okay. All right. Anybody? What were you going to say?
Favoritism of students.
Ooh, okay. Ooh, good one. All right.
Spent the entire class just staring at the board and writing on it.
Ugh, that is the worst.
That's pretty bad. And in the back?
Being oblivious to how their students are doing.
Being oblivious to how their students are doing. Okay. All of these things you need to think about in teaching public speaking. Nobody wants to be there. It's like making students go to the dentist, get a root canal. No one wants to be there. We have to understand that as instructors. We're trying to make it interesting for them. But you really need to think about, and this is what we ask students, who are the worst presenters and why do you think they're the worst presenters? You need to really take stock of what it was in other professors or teaching assistants that you didn't appreciate, and make sure you're building that professional persona that ensures that you're not going to be viewed that same way. Being on time, being approachable, taking constructive, having a forum for them to be able to give you feedback and you adopt that. So think about professionalism in a way, and your sense of being prepared in a way of kind of what informs how you would like to be in a class and have that instructor be.
What I would like to say is that you're going to have to at some point develop somewhat of a tough skin. So I guess I will say, don't take it personal. It's just business. There are going to be probably people saying some things that are just not nice, because what's going to happen is if they're not doing well, they're going to blame it on you. And not a lot of students do that. Most people are very well behaved, I think, on the whole. I think you're just going to have somebody that's really upset or something really bad is going on. For example, on Rate My Professor, 13 years ago, I had hot peppers, and I've lost my peppers. As I've gotten older, they start getting taken away. But my point is that at one point I was reading them, and one guy was like, she's good looking, and another 12 people decided to explain how I was very much not attractive. And here are all the specific reasons as to why I was not attractive. What? I'm an accounting professor. I did not write Supermodel. That was tough to hear. I mean, I was younger. I was 30 years old. And so now I'd be like, yeah, I'm sure you look awesome too. Okay. Internet troll. But that, at first, that's like, I mean, they were like, she hasn't lost the baby weight. She has a big nose. I was like, golly. So there's just, maybe you won't have as dramatic of an example of that. But people will say some things. It won't happen a lot. And you have to understand that they're upset about something. If you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, what's going to happen as a leader is someone's going to get mad at you. And that will be the best preparation for the real world. One of the hardest things is to be in charge of people, have people get mad at you, and you just kind of roll with it. Because that you can be crushed. And you're still so young. You're not used to getting slammed. You're in a position where you might kind of get slammed. And so, come back to it. I'm learning to be out in the real world, and as a leader, I'm going to get criticized. Remember that.
That might be among the worst things that happen, but yeah, you be prepared because it happens on occasion. So let's get back to those crushers, the students that you're teaching. One of the great roles that you have, first of all, is that most of you, or at least those who just finished undergrad and those who have finished undergrad not too long ago, are a lot closer in age to the students you're teaching than we are. So you use more of the same language, more of the same cultural references, at least things to communicate outside of reading the textbook kind of information. And we as faculty rely on that you're actually a better communicator about some of the things that are harder for us to communicate in our classes. So use that role. Try to be the person who can translate. One of the great ways, which actually is some advice I was going to get to later, if you have a chance to go to the lectures that correspond to the labs that you're teaching, do so. because you will see what the students are seeing. You will see the trouble they're having absorbing some of that information in real time. And you can be a huge benefit to them, and they will love you for it if you can help them over those hurdles that that you can see them having in the lecture, in the meeting with the faculty that you're working with. So if you're in that position, please absolutely do so. That's what I did for my first time TAing as a graduate student in an astronomy class, and it actually made my job really, really easy in recitation. I could see what the students were having trouble with. I was there actually taking notes along with them, and I could see from my notes what it was that I wanted to talk about in recitation, and the rest of it was easy. So do consider that. That can be one of the least often pieces of information that I think can be the most helpful. That's least often given, I would say.
Okay. In the being prepared and listening to your comments a few minutes ago, communication is key. You have a syllabus. I'm sure somebody's kind of handed you down the syllabus that you're supposed to follow, or the schedule for recitation or labs that you're supposed to follow. As Lisa said, make sure that you're kind of peppering in there some of your own personality and current events and things that can make it interesting. You have that ability. But communication, your students will you're going to have some opposition along the way. But the better communicator you are, the less of that you'll have. So making sure that the schedule is clear, that you're communicating with them, that you're communicating with your students, that you want them to communicate with you. And I'm sure, what do you all think a good response rate is? If you're a student and you email a professor, when would you like them to respond to you?
24 hours.
How many are in 24? How many are in 48? Are you a little nervous at 48? Okay. All of those things, once again, that you that you appreciate about another professor, you have to do that. You're going to have your own coursework. You're going to be busy. Time management is going to be huge to you. But one of the best things that you can do is in your labs, have a way that your students can communicate with you. Obviously not through your cell phone or Facebook. And let me go ahead and say, if you haven't already done it, they're going to be trying to friend you on Facebook. After the first day, they're going to get to lab and they're going to figure out who you are, and they're going to Google you in. And oh, by the way, if you haven't Googled yourself lately, you need to Google yourself before the first day of lab, and they figure out who you are, because they'll start doing that, and they'll pull up every little thing they can find on you. So you might need to go through and delete some pictures, do whatever you got to do. But have a way that they can communicate with you, and make sure that you are on top of it. It's going to take time management. But if you can respond quickly to students, have a time that you have an office hour that they can meet with you, maybe before or right after recitation or lab. But that communication is going to be key to keeping problems at bay or to preventing them. So, and that just is part of the professionalism as well.
I'd say as my last point is make lab valuable. I think so many labs I attended were garbage. And it's like, why are we, that was the majority of labs. You're always like, I'm getting nothing out of this. Unless it's a biology or a chemistry lab, I can't envision why we're here. So if you could ask yourself every week, what I'm about to do, is that going to add any value to anything? How about, do we need you to read slides? No. Do we need you to copy a problem out that we already have the answer to? No. Nobody needs a stenographer. No one needs someone to read slides. So I would say, whatever time frame you have, what I'm about to do to try to help them to learn something, is it truly adding value, or am I just filling garbage time? And I think it goes back to what you said. Think about those labs that were garbage, where you sat there miserable. Be different. There are things you can do that are valuable. There are concepts they learned that week that they don't get, and you can talk about them again. Maybe you're told to go over a couple problems. Maybe they just had an exam and a lot of the stuff they had trouble with. Value. Try to add value and make labs become something that people don't think is a filler.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So I want to get to this pedagogy, this middle layer here, in my layer cake, and very much actually playing off what we were just talking about here. Yeah, that's the top right. Oh, took a bite. Set expectations. That's part of what actually will happen in the lab, why the lab is useful, or whatever the interaction that you're managing is. what preparation do the students need to do to get something out of it, and why that preparation is valuable to them. And in this pedagogy, I also want to talk a little bit about teaching. Physics education research and astronomy education research has pointed to active learning as the most useful way of getting students to incorporate new information. So labs most often are naturally active learning environments. They're places where the students can put into their own words in discussions what it is they're trying to learn. And the more you can get them to speak in a constructive way in your teaching environment, in your lab, the more they're likely to be able to incorporate and use and analyze new information when that's the information that they're discussing, what they don't yet understand, what they're trying to piece together. So try to do that as often as possible. And my other tidbit is that if you're looking towards going on to higher education, to becoming the next faculty, your GTA experiences might be your only teaching experiences before you go up for a faculty job. So you have a chance to use this opportunity to experiment a little bit within whatever guidelines you're given for your syllabus or what your lab has to incorporate. Try to find new ways of getting students to engage. Try to bring a little bit of experimentation into that room and use that, leverage that as your experience that you can then push up and talk about when you're working towards your next position after you finish your graduate career here. Middle layer.
I'll give you one tip, and I know that some of you are probably going to be GTAs for me. Who are my people in here? Okay, somebody right there. It's my people. All right. What we do in mid-semester, talking about feedback, is I get my graduate assistants, the lab instructors, to do something called stop, start, keep. And it's proven to be wildly successful. So about midterm, they create small third of a sheet of paper that just says stop, start, keep. And they pass it out to all of the students in the lab. And they say, all right, what would you like us to start doing that we haven't been doing that would make class better or more productive? What would you like me to stop doing that could maybe improve? You have to be open to the criticism, right? What would you like me to stop doing that I could make it better? And then what's working? What can I keep? What's good that we can do more of? And they don't put their name on it. It's just open-ended, and they write things out. Then the lab instructors are able to kind of see. And of course, you're going to get some smart aleck, responses in there too. Moving on, just, take it and go. But if you allow that to, and don't get your feelings hurt, there's going to be some things that they're going to ask you to stop doing. Some of it you might not be able to stop doing. It's just a part of the class. But there might be one or two things that you can take from that, go to the next lab and say, I looked at everything and here was some of the, common themes. So for the rest of the semester, I'm going to try and adopt this thing where maybe we're going to make a few changes or tweaks. Their attitude toward you will change immensely because now they think that you're invested in making it a good experience. And if they see you be open to that criticism and make a couple of small changes, they're reinvested. Because think about it, from midterm on to the end of the semester is just nobody's happy to be there anymore, right? But if you can kind of reset that balance, then it helps to make it just a better lab and to get through. And it gives you that opportunity. As he was saying, this might be one of your only opportunities to teach, to learn as you're teaching. Even if you get some really bad responses at the end, you'll get some great responses in student opinion of instruction. You'll get some great ones. You'll get some bad ones. You don't just throw all of the bad ones in the trash. You really do have to be objective. What do I need to change about? Every semester, I read through all of my SOIs, and there are some takeaways. What do I need to adjust to make this better for students? So make it a learning experience for you as well. Any last?
No, I got my three.
Got your three?
I'm ready for questions.
Got one more piece, and that is really kind of a magic bullet. If I knew the answer to this, I would tell it to you, but I'll offer this as a challenge to you. Try to teach students to self-assess. That's got to be the biggest, or actually maybe the second biggest problem that I see in the classes that I teach. The biggest problem might be preparation. So get them to prepare, but then also try to teach them how they can guide themselves in the process of have they learned something adequately or have they not, or do they need to read more, need to practice more. Whatever piece of the puzzle that you could identify for as many students as you can, try to help them out that way. And again, they will love you for it. Now, and one more piece about these SOIs, about the student opinions of instruction, at least the ones I get, they hurt. So definitely be prepared. Talk to your peers, the older graduate students who've taught what you've taught, but just be prepared. Some of them have really fantastic feedback. That's what you're after. Some of them just hurt. So just, moving along. Yeah. It's part of the process.
Yeah, and my final thing is the approachable part. You do need to work on that professionalism, that professional persona for the classroom. How long does it take to make a first impression? Anyone?
7 to 2 minutes. 7 seconds to 2 minutes.
7 seconds to 2 minutes? Wow, that's a pretty wide range. So they say about 7 to 17 seconds to make a first impression. When you all came in, you were looking at us and already sizing us up, right? It's the natural human response. That's just the way it is. When you walk into class on the first day, you're assessing that professor or that instructor before they've ever opened their mouths. You need to understand that it's going to happen, and how do you manage it? So how you look professionally, how you carry yourself, greet students on the way in the door. I find this is big. If you stand at the door and on the first day, unless you've got 200, if you've got 30, you can do it. On the first day, stand there and welcome them as they come in the door. Shake their hand if you want to. But being that professional person is huge, but you also have to be approachable. So let them know that they can come to you and talk to you. In public speaking, high anxiety. We're dealing with a lot of high anxiety. Kids pass out in class, they have panic attacks, they run from the room crying. True, it's
Not
true.
all of them.
Not all of them, but it happens. And so the students that are teaching our labs, they're in a master's program for communication studies. Obviously, they probably don't have that problem. So I have to tell them, you have to be approachable. And they open that up for students. I know we're not doing the whole legal thing where you don't want to be too approachable, but you do want to say, hey, Making sure you have that professional balance, but tell students, I'm here, please come to my office hours, talk to me about what's going on, let me know if you're having any problems with this. You're going to be amazed at the things that students tell you, and some of it you don't necessarily want to know. And they'll kind of divulge a lot of things that you don't want to know. But try and keep it in the middle. But be approachable, because only when you're approachable can students come and say, I really have a huge anxiety issue, and just you need to know those things about students. So it's a balance. Okay, we're going to open it up for questions. We've got about 10 minutes.
All right.
Yes.
And you just address one of the questions I had, because I'm more of a shake your hand,
Sure.
good morning. But then, what's better? Do you come off kind of firm at the beginning to set the tone? Are you super friendly and approachable? And how do you avoid them thinking that they're going to be able to get away with a lot of stuff if you're friendly, or make them think that they're sunk if you're too firm? So how do you create that balance?
Go ahead.
Well, I think that's, I like to have fun in class. I like to enjoy myself in class, but I'm pretty hard-nosed about the rules, and that does come as a surprise. I try to get that from the very beginning. I'm not deviating from the syllabus. Nope, not deviating. It's pretty easy just to follow that. Now, the good news with you is you're not allowed to deviate from the syllabus. You don't have much judgment, so you can blame it on somebody else. It's kind of just like, I didn't write that. That's fun. I think it's the professionalism. People can be enjoyable, and you can have fun in a class, and be approachable and be friendly. But man, the rules are the rules. That's never going to be negotiable. I always say there's no negotiation of rules or your grades. We don't negotiate any of those things. Here are the rules, and this is how we're going to do things in the class. and we can have some interaction and have an enjoyable experience, but we've got a set of rules that we're constrained by. So I don't find it too hard. I do agree with you that I've heard a lot of people say be tougher in the beginning, but if you're just following one set of rules and not really deviating from it,
and they're clear.
Yeah,
People-
it's just
people
clear
know.
rules.
I mean,
Right.
you said
Set
this earlier.
expectations.
Yeah.
Those two words I think are just so important from the student's point of view, so they know what's expected of them, and that's part of following the rules.
Yeah.
What the assignments are, how they're graded. They're all uniform through the whole semester.
And that's really what you have the opportunity to do in that first class, especially in that first week. Realize that the first class, you're going to have students not showing up to that first class. And really, so that whole first week or 2 weeks, you almost need to be kind of reinforcing those expectations, talking about the expectations. One of my previous GTAs who will go down in history as she was great, but big personality. But she would tell her students on the first day, okay, people, my responsibility, your responsibility. Everything is going to fall in one of those two categories. My responsibility is setting clear expectations, clarifying assignments so that you understand them, helping you. Responding to your email, getting grades back on time. My responsibility. Your responsibility is, and she laid them out, being here on time, turning in your work on time, coming to my office hours if you need help. And so when students would come up to her, she literally would stand there at the first, they would say something and she would go, okay, is this my responsibility? Or is it your responsibility? Her name was Hunter Coward. Anyway, loved her. So, and that's just a great kind of, those setting expectations is huge. And remember, you can be friendly, but not a friend. Yes?
Yeah, so you kind of touched on this a little earlier, but how do you keep yourself interested when you're teaching or going over the same subject material for the fourth time in 2 days with a different group of people?
Go ahead.
I'd say try to look at it from a student's point of view who has never seen this before. So I actually even describe in some of my notes here, when you run through a lab, pretend you're an alien, right? You don't know anything about what anything works, and then try to recapture that when you're teaching something for the fourth time that week. Say, all right, there's someone out there who has never seen this before. Is there a better way I can describe this, or a better way to get the interaction, on this thing? Just reset. Say, all right, new student, how would I do this again, or how would I do it differently?
I have a class I have taught 111 times. This will be in 13 years, 111 times. I'm not having a problem with it, and you would think I would, because I'm looking at the people out there. I love my subject. You're like, accounting? Yes. Okay, back off. I like it. You're in a field you like. You've got to share why you like it. What I do is I'll pull up financial statements and talk about companies. Apple, Tesla, Walt Disney. I have 1,000 companies I can pull up. It comes back to that, show why you're doing this at all. If I can do it 111 times, you can do it.
It is. It's about your audience, and to some extent, it's a performance. It's a performance. You are, for that 50 minutes, the sage on stage.
The Celine Dion and the Titanic
you are,
song.
You are.
How does she do
and
it?
how many times has she sung that dang song? So, but you do. You have to think about, it's my 5th time saying it, but it's their first time this week sitting here, and it's their first class of this subject they've ever taken. So you have to kind of put yourself in their shoes, and it's hard. It gets really kind of, especially when you're taking classes and you've got so much else going on, it's a performance. Somebody in the back? Yes.
I wanted to talk about emails for a bit. I just taught at this university last month.
Okay.
And I had a class of 24 students, and they were great students, and I saw them 3 times a week for 3 hours a pop. And so I had a lot of FaceTime with them. Yeah. And I would talk to them. I didn't have office hours. We had other TAs that would do office hours. But I said, come to my office if you have questions about the class, things like that, to see your grades, because I didn't want to email grades. And I would answer emails within 2-3 hours typically of when they send them. I get them to my phone, it's like a text.
Yeah.
But there's some emails like about the pre-labs that I've told them constantly how to handle the pre-labs and that I can't change the pre-labs. So I got to the point where past midterm I stopped answering those emails.
Well, but what you say is you pull out the hunter coward. My responsibility, your responsibility. My responsibility is that those documents with instructions are on Blackboard. Your responsibility is and you can actually say that in class. Okay, if you send me an email and the information is in Blackboard, I'm going to respond with, see Blackboard. There's a faculty member in our department who the last week of class, I'm not kidding you, look it up online, I'm sure you can buy one. She wears a maroon shirt and it says, it's on the syllabus.
We have one that has it too. Yeah, it's a shirt
and she
you can
wears
buy.
it. It's on the syllabus.
Yeah,
syllabus.
every department has someone that wears that See the Syllabus t-shirt.
So, but you can just say, hey guys, you asked me a question, the information's out there, I'm not answering that. You can also set expectations of, some of them will get really huffy about, but I emailed you 30 minutes ago and you haven't responded.
Have you gotten this yet?
And so you can say, I will respond
no.
within 24 hours. If I haven't responded within 24 hours, feel free to email me again because I've got a lot going on. But make it a point to respond within 24 hours. And then, so it's all about communication.
And actually, on my syllabus, and I also cover it in class, I found a link on, I think it was a how-to link or something. It says how to email your professor. It's 13 bullet points. They don't have to read through every single time, but I tell the students, before sending me an email, at least read this once. It's in the syllabus twice, actually. So take a look at that. That actually helps set expectations and professionalism in email communications. And for some reason, we'll get off on the wrong foot if someone says, hey, or, there's no introduction, or there's no subject line. It has little details like that. I think that's great practice, both with students to you and also you to the faculty that you're working with. So that might help too. Set expectations for emails.
Don't send off an angry email.
Yeah.
I like to write them and then just look at them, maybe show them to people.
Yeah.
I'm like, look at this. Like, you're not going to send that, are you? And then just go back. But it's kind of fun, just sometimes to write it. But if you send it, you're going to regret it because it's there forever.
Yeah.
Your generation does not get that emails and texts never go anywhere. They're always there.
Yeah, and realize that this happened last semester, so we had 14 graduate students and they're all teaching, 3 labs apiece. And all of a sudden, students started coming to my office really angry about things. My lab instructor is not on schedule. They're ahead and they're a hard grader. And I was like, okay, wait, what's this about? My friends in somebody else's lab. Okay. They had created a group me. There were a couple of 100 students on a group me about COM 123. And so they were comparing lab instructors and comparing grades and finding holes. And the funny thing was, this student was totally convinced that her lab instructor was way ahead schedule and making them do all these things. And I pull up Blackboard and I turned it around. I was like, there's the schedule for all 500 and something of you, and she's on schedule. You need to look at your schedule, not read group me. But they will. So think about that. Consistency is key. Communication is big. All of that. Questions? Any more? I'm sure there's some. Yes.
In terms of answering emails, because we are also students, what would you recommend in terms of response? So is it okay not to respond on the weekend? I mean, you have to be available 24/7. I mean, how do you control that?
I think I respond on the weekend because I'm obsessed lunatic. I respond at red lights. You know the person you beep at? I'll give you a little hand gesture and respond. That's not normal. I think it is completely acceptable to not respond on the weekends. I have professionals at the university that absolutely, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation, but I do answer on the weekends.
You set your own policies, and I encourage my own lab instructors that they can set their own policies.
We have a lot of people that don't answer emails after work hours. I don't think you have to.
I do. I'm like
I
you.
know.
I typically do.
But you don't have to.
But yeah, you can set some parameters. Yes.
Do you have any tips on what to do? I know my college is really small, and I'm gonna know a lot of people in my classes. How to do, because we're a year, not even some of us, a year older than these people, and we've had classes with a lot of them. How do we be hey, I used to talk to you in this class last year, and now I'm teaching you. What, in that situation, how do you different? You know what I'm saying?
You know what?
No.
Honestly, the first and easiest thing to do is wardrobe.
It's true.
Wardrobe. They're not coming to class in a suit. They're not coming to class. I mean, really, they're not coming to class in slacks and a button down or a dress or whatever. Make sure that it's appropriate. Not the dress you wear somewhere else. I mean, truly. And that's the first thing, because it's a visual indicator, and so much of a first impression is visual. They may know you, but once again, it's already been said here, you're an employee. At this point, you are an employee, and that's how you get to kind of put this, hey, I know that we've known each other, but I'm the instructor of this course, and I'm set to, a higher set of expectations, and you have a boss, and that's kind of, you get to work in that kind of realm.
And it'll happen in the real world. You're going to have your friends that are going to be your boss. It's just part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Set the boundary.
Yeah.
And remind them that it's your job to give them a grade, or not really give, to assess how well they can do the material. So you have to have that distance and make sure they know that, if they're crossing the line, well, you have a responsibility here.
Never good to go drinking with your lab people. Please don't ever do that.
Not
Please
till the end
don't
of the
do
semester.
that. Yeah, end of semester's fine when the grades are in. Please don't do that.
Anybody else? Questions? You're thinking? That's another thing. If you haven't taught, you're going to go to Target in your workout clothes. You're going to go to the rec. You'll be in the locker room changing, and somebody will come up to you and go,
hopefully not in the shower.
Hey! No, it's happened. It's happened to, didn't you all just listen to Adam Brooks in there? Adam works with me, and he has had this one student last semester who would come up to him in the locker room.
Ooh.
As he's changing, he's like, "Hey, so in that class," and he's like, "Let's get dressed," But
hand me my underwear.
Do you mind?
Don't look at it.
But you'll be out at a bar, you'll be doing something, and your students will see you, and you're kind of like a star now because you're that person up in front of the class. It's truly, and so they're going to approach you. Be ready for that. But also, don't get in. Be friendly.
They will try to buy you drinks. That's a big thing they'll do because they think. You see, they think that's.
Yeah. Don't have a drink with them. Go to another bar. Don't let them take your picture. All of that's happened. So just kind of, yes.
Why not the picture?
Facebook.
You just don't want to do that. I mean,
Because they want
anybody?
it on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Won't look professional. Maybe they're saying, "Oh, you're doing something you're not doing."
Yeah.
That kind of
Perception.
Yeah.
Perception is reality. Anybody else? Yes.
But if it's under $25, right, that's the thing.
I don't think that applies to alcohol or cigarettes, but good try.
I think I'll do that.
Don't accept shots, please. We don't. Oh, come on.
It's true.
It's not worth it.
Anything else? I think we're about out of time. If you have any questions, come up here and feel free to ask us. Thank you for being here.
Bye, guys.